What began as a video about what I'm taking to Joshua Tree for a few nights of astrophotography morphed a little bit into state of cameras in 2017. So I'm going to do just that in this video. I'm going to walk through what I'm going to take to Joshua Tree, leaving in a couple of hours, for astrophotography, night sky, not the eclipse. And as I go through some of this stuff, I'm going to just kind of share some of my opinions about it. One of the most common questions I'm getting these days is kind of what is a more travel-friendly package, so I have some thoughts on that. And I'm really interested to hear from you all. It's been a while since I've done kind of one of these amorphous. This isn't a review of anything right now, maybe first impressions of some of it, thoughts on some of it, but I love hearing from you all, your thoughts, and what on this table you're most interested in hearing more about, what you'd like to see full reviews. There certainly will be some of that coming from some of these pieces of gear, and some of them might just be thoughts. All right, well, let's get started with the Samyang 14mm f2.8. I've talked a lot about this lens before. I have full reviews of it. I'm bringing this lens along mostly as a comparison tool. This is just it ranges in price on sale from as low as $250 to sometimes around $350 or $370. But it is a fantastic bargain. How does it compare against something that is about twice the price? This is the new Irix 15mm f2.4. Ooh, it's a little faster. It certainly has a better build quality. It looks a little bit snazzier. Does that matter at all? Does that mean anything when you're out there shooting the stars? No. But I'm really impressed with it so far, and it wins the award for fanciest packaging. It comes in, I'm going to call it a cookie tin, but it's this little tin that it just fits in so nicely. Actually, inside the tin, it comes in this cool, soft, zippered case, and they even give you an extra rear cap. They give you two of these caps in the back. Yeah, it's nice little touches like that impress me. This is, I said, $600. There's two different versions of this. There's the kind of higher-end Blackstone version, which is supposed to be a little bit higher quality and better build quality, and there's a slightly cheaper version. This is the $600. So paying about twice the cost, how much better will it be than the Samyang or Rokinon 14? We'll see. Also, will that f2.4 versus f2.8 make much of a difference in the field, 14 versus 15? And then the lens that I'm really interested to see how well it performs, it's the Sigma 14 f1.8. So significantly faster, significantly more expensive, of course. This comes in at about, I think it's $1,400 right now, $1,399. Beautiful looking lens. If you've watched any of the videos on this channel, you know I am a big fan of these Art Series lenses. I think they're doing an excellent job with them. Their value is fantastic. And to have a lens this wide and this fast can be pretty dreamy for shooting the stars. So I'm really excited about that. And how will it compare against a much cheaper, lighter budget alternative? And this Sigma right now is mounted on the 6D Mark II. Now, is it safe to call the 6D Mark II the most controversial camera of 2017? It certainly has. It's got a lot of videos online with headlines like joke, ridiculous. Actually, I don't know. Are there any actual headlines that say joke or ridiculous? There's a lot of people talking about the fact that its dynamic range just isn't on par with competitors right now, and not even as good as maybe some crop sensor cameras that are currently on the market. So, the first thing that I would like to say, I've shot with this only a tiny little bit. It arrived just a few days ago. I will be doing a full review. If you can't take a good picture with this camera, it is not the camera's fault. That's all the cameras on the table. We're at a point in 2017 where there are tons of fantastic cameras with really nice sensors inside them. And if you look at what beautiful images people made 5-10 years ago with digital cameras, and you look at where we are today, we've come a long way. And these cameras shouldn't be holding anybody back. But at the same time, and I talked about this on my live show yesterday for my supporters and support group on Patreon, you know, these are tools. And you can certainly hammer into the wall. You can certainly put a nail into the wall or into the board with a variety of hammers. A cheap hammer will do the job. It might not be as easy. You might hit your thumb a little bit more easily versus like a really nice well-balanced hammer with just the right size head for your nail. So, you know, the 6D Mark II in my mind is like that. It's kind of like that little bit of a cheaper hammer. In some landscape situations, you're going to be better off with a camera that's going to give you more dynamic range. We'll see though. I'll reserve my full opinion. The only other thing I've noticed so far is this button pad back here. It really kind of feels cheap and squishy. I don't love that. But the 6D, original 6D, it felt fantastic in the hand. This one feels very nice too. It was one of my favorite cameras to recommend for people looking to move to full frame for kind of general photography and landscape. Will the 6D Mark II be something I recommend as often? Honestly, I don't think so. Because as I said, it's harder to make an argument that it is a good value when you put it against some of its peers. But I still think it's a good camera, and of course it can still take fantastic pictures. The other camera that I'm really excited to work with a little bit on this trip is the Fuji X-T2. Now this has been out for a while, so this is, you know, not a cutting edge review when this comes out of in any means, but I just love the quality that you get out of these cameras straight out. I love the fact that Fuji's kit lens, this is an 18 to 55, it's an f2.8 maximum aperture, so I can wander out into the desert in Joshua Tree and happily take really nice photos. 18 millimeters at f2.8, very happy I'll be very happy to do that. You know, I gave the XT a recommendation, but I personally didn't love this kind of slower, more dial-centric operation. I felt like I had to take my eye away from the camera to make settings. And some of that was my comfort with this camera and not shooting a lot with cameras similar to it previously. So, you know, that's a personal bias that I'm going to move beyond. And as I said, this camera has some really nice features. One of the things that I love is the interval timer works exactly as I expect it to, not like in Nikon. Can't stand the interval timer in Nikon cameras because I can set this up to shoot a 2-minute exposure with a 1-second break, and the interval timer works exactly like I want. And 2-minute exposure in the camera with no intervalometer plugged in. I don't have to have anything else. I don't have to have the now defunct trigger trap. I don't have to have some intervalometer with really bad English instructions and try to figure it out. I just have to have this camera and a tripod, and I can plunk it down somewhere and start to get some really nice pictures. So I love seeing these cameras be more and more feature-packed with lots more tools built in. And when I look at, I mean, this is a $2,000 camera. I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of compare and contrast what you can get for that price. In this case, you can get the lens as well. In this case, $2,000 doesn't get you the lens. Full frame versus APS-C. How much of that is an argument anymore? I think it's less and less these days, especially in the case of the 6D Mark II. I don't want to ramble on too much about that. Two other things that I'll say about the Fuji so far is the menu looks like it's from 1990, but it is packed full of features. And two, this articulating screen. So it comes out this way, and then you can also do, there's a little latch, and you can do this way. That's a little odd to me. I'd love to hear your comments. Fuji owners, do you love it like this? Do you use it regularly pulled out to the side? I'm just trying to figure out how I would use it like that. I certainly love the articulating here. It can't replace or be a vlogging camera for me unless it flips out to the side, which brings me to the next camera that I want to talk about. This is the GH4. We're going to pretend it's the GH5 for a minute because that camera is filming me. I have a separate video that will come out at some point that just kind of shares my experiences with the GH5 now. We're running over 3 months that I've been using it and taking it on many trips all over the place. And I've been really, really happy with that camera. A lot of hubbub made about its focusing system and slow focusing. That hasn't been an issue for me at all, but that also depends on how I use it. I mean, I get focused and then start filming, and that works very well for me. So if you're somebody who wants to rely on the continuous autofocus, maybe the GH5 isn't best for you, but I've been taking more and more photos with it. I'm very happy with the quality, very happy with the dynamic range, how much detail I can pull out of the shadow, and certainly That smaller sensor doesn't do as well in low light, but I'm very happy with that camera. And the lens that I'm really excited to take to Joshua Tree is this teeny tiny Venus Laowa 7.5 millimeter f2.8. So that is a 15 millimeter. And again, like the Fuji, the GH5 is packed full of features like time-lapse or intervalometer that just works as I expect it to. So again, I'll be able to take up to 60-second long images in camera with a 1 or 2 second gap, whatever I want to do for star trails or time-lapse of the night stars moving. So again, I really like these tools having more options that I can use that just kind of make my job easier and let me leave other bits at home. Let's go back to the Fuji for a second, because I did mention I want to talk about the state of cameras in 2017, and I've kind of touched on it a little bit. One of the questions I get often is about travel cameras and traveling lightweight. And it's really tricky. You could, of course, pick up something like the Sony a7R II, which is a much lighter camera than the 6D Mark II. But this is a full frame camera, and as soon as you start to put full frame lenses on it, it starts to lose those advantages. If you stick to the f4 lenses, it's still a pretty nice travel setup. 24-70 f4, 70-200 f4. You have that with the Sony a7R II, and you've got a really nice setup. I'm just so happy with this sensor still, and I'm quite happy with this camera. I have to be, because now I've dropped it so many times that it's pretty darn dinged up, and I don't think I'll ever be able to get anything resale value for it. So I'm happy with it. So if you really want to go and travel lighter and faster, you know, I did that review of the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II last year, and I really liked that camera. Feature packed, extremely lightweight, and you're working with those micro four thirds sensors, so your lenses, like this little 7.5 millimeter, they're tiny, and they stay tiny, unless you move up to the really big f2.8, but even then. And now, some of you can say, well, equivalency, they're not actually f2.8. Okay, sure, whatever. It's true, but it's all a nice sized package, but you are definitely going to give up some low light performance. Not a ton, but some. And then, so I think the sweet spot is around that APS-C. You got something like the Fuji. And as I said, I really like that you can pick this up with a kit lens, and the kit lens quality is fantastic. I generally recommend people starting with kit lenses anyway, but this kit lens is fantastic, and you're good to go. The other APS-C is the Sony system, the A6300 and 6500. Those are extremely lightweight cameras. Keep just APS-C lenses on there, or crop sensor size lenses, and you can keep a nice lightweight package. Now, they don't look as nice, and they're not kind of as user-friendly, I think, as something like the Fuji, but those are still very nice cameras. And for those of you, a lot of people who ask me about traveling lighter already have Canon gear, or maybe Nikon, and the Sony has that nice advantage of being able to use adapters, like the Sigma or the Metabones, while you kind of transition, or at least when you want to travel. And then, though, you're back to using those heavier Canon lenses, and your body's lighter, but what's the overall weight ratio savings there? So it's tough, but what I've been doing lately is building out kits at this site called kit.com, and I'll put a link right down below, kit.com/PhotoRec. And you can see my current picks for things like the best travel gear, the best landscape gear, the best wildlife gear, the best budget vlogging gear. Lots of different kits are there, including even my favorite board games and some of my favorite books over the years, just because I think it's interesting to be able to share that with anybody who's interested. So take a look at that, and as I said in the comments of this video, I would love to know what you're more interested in hearing about. The last bits of gear that I want to talk about is the DJI Spark. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, I put up a story the other day with the Mavic, the Spark, and the Bug. And I said, which one do you want? More people wrote back to that story. Nobody thought I was really giving, well, I think a couple people are like, are you really giving one away? No, I was just curious which one people would want. And 99.9% of the people chose the Mavic. I think that's fairly expected. Only one person said I would also take the Spark. I'm really curious to see how I feel about this. I love the Mavic. It is not quite as portable, but once it's folded down, it's pretty close to it. It, of course, shoots 4K, and it really feels like a tool that I can use to get shots that I want. This feels more fun, especially with the force hand gesture control that I've just started using. But you're only got 1080 video max. That might not matter to some of you. And you don't have RAWs, you only have DNGs. You only have JPEGs, whereas in the Mavic you have DNGs. And again, these are smaller sensors, so it's not that exciting to have a RAW out of them, but it certainly does give you more dynamic range and the ability to recover more from the highlights and adjust the shadows a little bit more. But gosh, it's cute. And I watched somebody on YouTube the other day just see what the range is. If you buy the Fly More combo, you do get the little remote control, and your range is up to 2 miles. This guy flew it something like close to 8,000 feet off into the distance. It's just kind of amazing to me that these small little packages can just handle themselves so well in a variety of conditions and fly off, and the whole time shooting beautiful looking 1080 video. And then when it lost its signal at that range, it turned around and came home and still had about 20% of battery life when it got back home. That's pretty impressive. So I will be talking more about that. And for the sticklers out there, I will not be flying this in Joshua Tree National Park because you're not allowed to fly drones in parks. And I do follow the rules, but we'll be staying outside the park, and wide open desert spaces are fantastic places to kind of play with these because there's very little to run into. That probably went longer than I wanted it to, but that is a look at the gear on the table currently. Oh, actually I didn't talk about this, the Sony 35mm f2.8 lens. This is the Rokinon. Kind of, it's a knockoff of Sony's 35. This was on sale on B&H the other day for $2.99, and I thought, well, I'll pick it up. I'm pretty happy with it so far. One of the shots that I think illustrates its sharpness nicely and shows that it's got that kind of onion skinning bokeh in the background of bokeh. If that bothers you, you might not like this lens, but I love its size and its weight, and it's very hard to beat that price. So it certainly makes the Sony a lot more portable and fun to walk around with. Most of the time I have my adapted Canon 24-70 on here, and that quality is beautiful, but it's certainly not that much fun to carry around. And a full frame 35mm is a fantastic general walk around lens. All right, so that was a look at the gear I'm taking to Joshua Tree, some thoughts on the Canon 6D Mark II, some thoughts on traveling lighter. If you've got any questions, leave them right down below. And I already asked for your comments about what piece of gear on the table you're most interested in hearing more about from me. Thanks so much for watching.
You're 99. You come through the door, you break a smile and tell me all